I want to go ahead and get started here. And if they join, they're just going to miss the intro part of it. So thanks for joining. I appreciate the time today. You're all busy. I get that. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Frank Morrow. I'm with Xtek Partners. I'm the sales manager. We're an IT solutions provider out of Columbus, do an awful lot. Certainly do a lot with Cisco. And I've noticed over the last 12 to 18 months, even though security is something that is always in the forefront of IT, it seems like there's been a very uptick in interest for customers to look at their security posture. Cisco Duo is a great option, and it's a lot more than just simply a multi-factor authentication tool. And we're fortunate to have Caroline Ambrose today from Cisco, who's going to present Cisco Duo, and I think you'll find this very interesting. If you haven't looked at it in a couple of years, there's been some increases in some of the benefits of Cisco Duo. So I'm going to turn it over to Caroline at this point to present. Caroline?
Thanks, Frank. I just wanted to pop my video on too to say hi to you guys. I know it's sometimes easier to put a face to a name, so I'm Caroline. I'm the Duo account manager for Southern Ohio and Kentucky. I also recently took over Minnesota and the Dakotas, so got a full picture of the Midwest, and I'm based in Michigan. So Duo is a company based out of Ann Arbor, so don't take that too personally. I myself went to Michigan State, so that's a little hard for me sometimes too as well. I'll turn this off and I'm going to share my screen.
I just noticed all the OSU fans dropped.
Sorry about that. Well, so you guys can see my screen, okay? Can you give me a thumbs up?
Looks
Okay,
good.
perfect. Thanks, Frank. So I've been with Duo for about 2 years and have been in software and SaaS for a while before that too as well. So I'm really thankful to have the opportunity to meet with all of you. I want you to leave here knowing why Duo is necessary in more than just MFA and have all of your questions answered. So if there's anything that I don't cover, please feel free to send questions in the chat. Frank, I'm sure, can facilitate and we'll get you an answer, whether it be today or a follow-up in the future. So you may be here for a couple different reasons. I know there's hard requirements on MFA and general curiosity on what Duo is and what the word on the street is about us. As a part of Cisco, we were acquired, was a startup in, started in 2006, and then were acquired in 2018 by Cisco. I'm going to cover today what Duo does, how we're different, and after, if you'd like to connect for a more personalized conversation about your organization and security goals, the Xtek Partners team and I are happy to set up those calls, do some demonstrations, and potentially plan maybe your Duo proof of concept and roll out if MFA and device hygiene and insight is something that's on your roadmap for the coming year. Just a quick show of hands. Is anybody familiar with Duo or have you guys used it in the past? Feel free to use the raise hand. Cool. Love to see a couple of people who might be familiar. Duo is always being developed, so if there's something that you might have seen in the past, I'd like to show you some of the new features and talk a little bit more about what has changed. So to start out, you might be wondering why Duo and why now? So cybersecurity is an ever-changing part of our business in technology, in our lives. In the last couple of years, we've seen a huge shift in the IT landscape with remote work and people getting more access to different types of devices. So as it's ever changing, we want to make sure that you're covering all of your attack vectors and make sure that you guys are fully protected. With that shift, users, devices, and cloud apps have moved outside of the traditional network that you've all probably been known to, so that perimeter is changing. Organizations have different types of users that they need to protect and not leave any holes there. So contractors, third-party vendors, remote workers, connecting to the corporate network. Increasingly, they're maybe using their own devices. Maybe corporate devices aren't as big of a thing. Maybe they are, but you still want to be able to know what's on your network at all times. Smartphones and tablets are more likely to connect to applications and networks that you may not know are even there. Meanwhile, you still have your applications and servers and containers and other workloads that you can be found that are talking to each other across your infrastructure. Um, Whether it be in the cloud, like AWS or Azure or a data center. Smart devices that we all call the Internet of Things, or you'll maybe hear me say IoT, Wi-Fi devices. They have created another vulnerability and entry point that unfortunately that if bad actors would just spend their time doing something for the common good, we may not I might be out of a job, but it's unfortunately they're always working on their next big move. So with this shift in mind, the business challenges have evolved as well, and new threats have emerged. So threats now are targeting your identity. So we consider that users and their devices, as 81% of breaches involved compromised credentials. So that passwords are just a way that they can get past the traditional perimeter, and get access to applications that are undetected. Your applications, which is the uh, next step, 54% of web app vulnerabilities have a public exploit available to hackers. So that means if servers and applications aren't patched, then there's known flaws. So we all know that, and I can be guilty of this as well. A new update comes out on your operating system. Maybe you wait a couple days. Well, maybe there's a huge flaw in there, or maybe people aren't sure how to do it, or not sure, like they want the IT help to get that done. Um, they're leaving a hole there, and sometimes in a 0-day event. And then in terms of devices, so this stat might be a little old at this point, but Kaspersky Labs found a 300% increase from 2017 to 2018 in Internet of Things or IoT malware. So connected devices were targeted more than ever by attackers. So they knew that they could get into those smart devices. And we have them all in our homes even. So Wi-Fi routers, different, like a Ring doorbell, things like that. So I mean, that's a little out of probably the scope today, but there's just more opportunity than ever for the wrong person to get access to your network. And not to fully scare you, um, but what's different? So what the traditional approach to what we call zero trust, when you compare that to what Duo does, in the old approach, it's basically been trust is based on the network location, so where your access originates from. And in a zero trust approach, trust is more dynamic, so it's more adaptive. It can be established from every request, no matter where it comes from or who it comes from, what type of device it comes from. This approach prevents the attackers from moving within your network if they get in and to get to your data. So it secures access across apps and networks and only allows the right users and devices to gain access. In addition to better access security, a zero trust approach also supports modern enterprises. So things like BYOD, and as you evolve to cloud applications, or have sort of a hybrid cloud or on-premise environment, that's really flexible, and it will grow with you in a zero trust approach. Any questions about zero trust, or everybody just kind of scared about what's what's out there against that we're fighting against? All good. We can move on to what Duo's approach is. So with that in mind, I want to share how we do that. And what Duo's approach focuses on is protecting three things. So we're protecting the most basic layers of zero trust, which are your users, your devices, and application access. But why these things? So when you think of a breach, the most common scenario that people think about is a compromised password. So while that stat at 81% is pretty staggering, Another high number is the 70% that occur due to compromised devices. And what I mean by that, a compromised device would be a device where a vulnerability, like an out-of-date operating system or a browser, or a device that's jailbroken or one maybe without screen lock enabled. So those have been used to gain access to your sensitive information. And traditionally, Duo may have been just thought of as an MFA provider, but where we separate ourselves from other providers is where our policy stack comes in. And I'll talk about that a little bit farther down the line. But this encourages your users to keep a certain device hygiene standard. So the policies are set by you, the IT team, to make sure that users are taking device health into their own hands and removes the threat of a compromised or unhealthy device from your network. At the same time, not adding additional burden to you and your team for those people who may have gotten a new phone and don't know how to protect that new device and make sure that that's trusted, or that they haven't kept their browser operating system up to date. So people look to Duo to help. With the changes that I mentioned in the IT landscape, cybersecurity insurance providers have been upping the ante on what they need to protect with MFA to insure businesses. Cyber insurance is probably the number one thing that I talk with customers about. Whether you are just given a heads up that you need to get this added in the next year or so, or you have a hard deadline, it's definitely something that we can help with. We easily meet those requirements with some pretty simple integrations. And then we also help with compliance requirements. So things like HIPAA, NIST, PCI, CMMC, have a whole list of compliance things, how we help meet those and what we do based on what edition of Duo that you're on. And then with remote access, we can protect those remote and hybrid workers so you can be confident that you don't have gaps there. Whether you have people who are fully remote or sometimes come into the office, they can safely work from anywhere with Duo. And then as you scale, so tons of businesses have taken more of a cloud-based approach and are moving more that direction. And Duo is scalable. So as you add more cloud applications, you can protect those easily with Duo. If you have custom or on-premises applications, those are also, you can protect anything that speaks Radius, LDAP, or SAML 2.0 with Duo. So we can start small and grow with you as you move more, as you need more flexibility and grow more in the cloud. So, drum roll. Here's what we do and how we do it. So I'm going to cover how we verify the identity of users, we verify the health of their devices, how we can control which users and devices gain access, and protect all applications that are used all the time. So how we do it is with MFA. Then you verify your health of your devices with a device check based on some access control policies, and then you're at the basic levels of zero trust, and SSO is included in all editions of Duo as well. So first, you're going to verify the identity of your users. The most basic level of zero trust is verifying those, which is done through MFA. The most bang for your buck that you're going to get in a security product is multi-factor authentication, or you might hear MFA or 2FA. But this is because you're verifying the identity of your users with something they know, like their laptop password or a numerical code that's sent to them, with something that they have, which is their laptop, mobile phone, a physical token, maybe a wearable like an Apple Watch. And now can include something that you are, which includes biometrics, fingerprint or facial recognition, and we're getting to the most recent updates with passwordless. So eventually passwords aren't really going to be a thing, and you're going to be able to authenticate based on what your physical those physical attributes like facial ID, which what can be more secure than your own face? Second, you're going to verify the health of their device. So at the point of authentication, a health check is run with Duo. on the device being used to access the application. So you're ensuring that it reaches the device health standard, which is customizable to what you and your team deem appropriate. It's called the Duo Device Health Application, or DHA for short. So you're making sure that the other safeguards that you've put in place are also running and up to date. So things like keeping an up-to-date operating system, having a password set, making sure that encryption is on and firewalls are enabled are all checked here. If something you'll see in that your system box, that person's Mac OS is not up to date. If you click that little arrow, it's going to show you how to update your browser. So we can get into that more in a live demo too, but it's going to help with self-remediation. But I do want to point out that Duo isn't an MDM. So we don't have the ability to wipe devices. We can't read text or look at search history, which I know sometimes people are concerned with. We're strictly here to make sure you are who you say you are and that your device is up to par before you access company assets. I'll pause here. Any questions about that?
Okay, Carol, I don't have a question. Just want to add something because you brought to mind when you were talking about compliance. And I think there must be more, I guess, requirements that insurance companies and some of the folks on the call might have ransomware insurance. And they've kind of upped their requirements for you to get that because there's been so many incidents of ransomware. And so whether it's compliance because of industry, like you said, HIP or PCA or PCI, that's certainly one thing. But then also just simply to maintain the insurance that you may need for your organization, the requirements that you check the boxes of what you've done to make sure you're in compliance. We've had a lot of people come to us for that most recently and saying, hey, we just got audited. And for us to maintain our insurance, we have to do X, Y, and Z. And some of that relates to MFA and what Duo does. So I just want to kind of clarify that a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. So cyber insurance, um, my advice always when somebody's hit with a requirement there is ask specifically what they want you to cover. A lot of, in my experience, those requirements have been super vague, but they'll say something like remote access on privileged accounts. So that's been a VPN, maybe remote desktops and Windows logons, which is something that Duo really excels in. It's an integration we can set up in about 30 minutes. And email. So oftentimes this leads to a bigger conversation where people might already have, let's say, Microsoft on their 365 for email. What Duo does there is we can consolidate that experience so that your users are using one MFA solution. And when they do that, they're trained on it. They know when something is going to look odd. They know that if they're getting an attempt, they're just going to be a little bit more user savvy and educated on what's anomalous or looks weird when they're using one platform rather than a whole bunch of slew of apps. And also it's just a little bit cleaner and you have more visibility of to what's happening in your network rather than checking a bunch of different dashboards. So yeah, those insurance policies can get pretty high, and I mean, Duo is pretty reasonable and a great way to combat those insurance requirements. Next, after you've done your MFA and your device health has been checked, on the admin side, you're going to be able to control which users and devices gain access with some access policies. So if a person doesn't meet a policy for whatever reason, and this can be based on location, IP address, device health, tons of things. If once you trial Duo and take a look at our policy stack, it's huge. So one thing that I'll call out is geolocation. So if you only do business in the US and you're getting attempts from Russia or China or a country where you definitely don't have anyone, they're based on the policy you set, they can be automatically blocked. So these policies are twofold. So they improve your security posture, but also take some things off of your your own plate, like updating operating systems and browser patching. So if you set a standard that you want people to be at the most updated version of their operating system, then you can give them 2 weeks or 0 days to update that. That's all customizable, and they won't be allowed in until they take care of that on their own. As part of the self-remediation or and those prompts, those can be configured, but we also include little videos to show them how to do it. So they're also taking a little bit of responsibility as well. So policies, they can be set at a user, application, or group level and are customizable is the word that you'll hear me say a lot. So there's tons out there that it's hard to call out. Like I said, doing a Duo proof of concept is the most effective way to realize what's important to you. It's free, and it'll help you on your own time determine what is most important to you in the organization, and then know that it's all so super customizable. And then lastly is applications. So there's no limit to the number of applications that you can protect with Duo. It's what I like to call, when you're licensed, you have an all-you-can-eat buffet of applications. You might see some familiar ones on here on this slide, but you might have some questions as well. So like I said, Duo can protect anything that supports Radius, LDAP, SAML 2.0, and most recently OIDC has been made available. So like I said, always growing, always evolving, and we consider ourselves, use the term vendor agnostic, so we can protect anything. We're not limited to just Cisco applications or just Microsoft applications. As long as it speaks one of those protocols, we can protect it. And even if it doesn't, our engineering team is excellent and has been known to, they have their own little repository of gems and information to protect some of those more obscure applications that are used, whether it be a EHR or something used in the manufacturing industry. I know that that's really been prevalent in Ohio and Kentucky, that manufacturing has a lot of different things that a regular corporate setting isn't going to have. So we're versed in that and have lots of flexibility. So broadest range of authentication methods to touch on maybe manufacturing or a hospital setting where things you may not have access to everything that you need at a certain time. So we know that user populations are different, whether it's skill level or adaptability. I've heard it all, of what people do and don't feel comfortable with in terms of MFA, but still have companies still have requirements to meet. So that's why we have the broadest range of authentication methods. The most common and easiest is the Duo Push, which is done within the Duo mobile app. We work with wearables. And for those who don't maybe want to put the app on their phone, that's usually the next question. For whatever reason, or they don't have a smartphone or can't bring a phone into their environment, we have options there as well. So for somebody who maybe forgot their phone that day, you can set it up so that they can use a phone call to their desk phone. Or if they might be a flip phone person, that's okay too. They can use SMS and hardware tokens like a YubiKey, or Duo also has a token. Those are great as well for people who maybe can't take their phone to where they do their job. For whatever the scenario, we're gonna work to figure out what's the most efficient and secure mode of auth for you guys. And then what you're not seeing here that was recently added was the Duo verified push, which might be the experience that you've had when you've done MFA in the past. This is where you enter a code from one factor. So we can customize it to be between 3 and 6 digits. So we'll get that code on your phone, and then to the screen on your second factor. So you'd enter that code that pops up on your laptop on your device. And that verified push is available as an auth method. Was added because, yes, the ease of use is important, but with some of the things that have happened, incidents in the industry like push phishing or push bombing, where the user has been overwhelmed with push attempts to get them to let a bad actor in. The verified push is one that has been added to make it a little bit more, give a little bit more friction for maybe users that you're a little bit more concerned about. Maybe you want to just turn on verified push for your C-suite. That's possible too. So a factor that I wanted to make sure that it wasn't yet added to this presentation, but it's there for you. So I want you to walk away from this knowing that if you need MFA deployed quickly, without a huge burden to your IT team or user base, Duo is the way to go. It's absurdly quick to deploy. We have done rollouts to staffs of 10,000 people within 5 days. That's one of our common success stories that's talked about. We integrate, I would say instantly. You can get RDP set up within maybe a half-hour call. You can set up your users to self-enroll, so that's not something that you're being tasked with. We're always evolving, so risk-based authentication has probably been, I know that I chatted with Frank's team about this, that it builds on the idea of that verified push. So what we do is notice pattern matching based on the policy stacks to create a baseline for each user. So we kind of learn what habits look like, where they log in from, what their Wi-Fi range looks like, their IP address. Notice if something isn't possible. So if they're based in Columbus and then they're logging on for the day at 9 o'clock and there's an attempt from San Jose at 9:15, we're gonna know that that's an anomalous attempt. That's something that looks risky. So they're gonna, instead of just the regular Duo push, what risk-based authentication does is hit them with that verified push. So they're hit with the code instead. So it's just adding a little bit more friction, but not blocking them if something doesn't look right. So your users are outside of that, users can authenticate in seconds. So what the push does is just that green checkbox that you'll see on the hand on the right. You're just hitting that. So there's no code to enter, and like I said, unless it's your preferred method. So if you want a code or if you wanted to use a hard token, that's okay too. It's flexible. Your vendor agnostic named integrations and general protocols. So like that screen that was shown previously with all of those applications, we have documentation for all of those and some generic ones if it's just, even if you didn't see it, but it supports SSO, that's great. LDAP, Radius, SAML 2.0, OIDC. I will say that over and over again, just so that you know we can protect everything. Your user experience is always going to be consistent. So when you're using Duo for your applications, for every application in your environment, users are going to be familiar with that. It's easy to deploy and manage. We like to say that Duo is a set it and forget it type product. So it's giving you customizable policy control. But last that I want to call out is peace of mind. So I had a conversation with a CISO recently, and she said security is what keeps her up at night. And that just really resonated with me. With Duo, she has that peace of mind. And she said that. And I said, Kim, can you please jump on every call with me and say that to people? She's someone who they started with MFA and they're growing to Access. So she's like a perfect example of being scalable and knowing that we're there for her so that there's not much that she has to maintain or manage, but she can definitely continue growing. I think I saw a question flash. Frank, would you mind reading that to me?
Absolutely. So John asked a good question because I was going to kind of touch on this, but is it possible to set up something like conditional access? So if they are on a trusted network, then they aren't prompted to MFA. And I know when you're talking about zero trust, it doesn't look at the network. So, but can you bypass that? So if they're on a trusted network, they don't get the push.
Yep, definitely. When you say conditional access, it makes me think of Azure, which can easily be hooked in with Duo. So we like to say an Azure policy it takes about 4 of those to get to one Duo policy. And you can set up user groups to have different privileges and permissions. So if you want your C-suite to not have to MFA, you can set it up that way. If you want people to only have to authenticate when, or not have to authenticate when they're on the office Wi-Fi in that, or on in your company's IP range, then you can do that as well. Flexibility is the key.
Yeah, it sounds like it's highly, flexible to whatever, even though it has capabilities to do all this stuff, you can kind of pare it down to what you need with your organization.
Yeah, and when I'm having conversations, especially with like cyber insurance being so prevalent, will have a conversation and I'll like to ask and know what your priority is. Do you just want to meet a requirement, or is security what you want to do? Obviously I'm gonna push people to be more secure and get rid of some of those risks, but if it's just meeting a requirement, that's easily done with Duo. And locking things down and becoming more secure in the process, because you're if it's there's we're not adding a ton of friction. What we've seen is if it's harder than what they're used to, people are gonna look for a workaround. Because Duo is so easy, people have just adopted to it, because it's not a huge thorn in their side.
No, very good.
So what's next? So first you can win a prize, kind of making a game out of this. So the first three people to email me, and this is my email address, caambros@cisco.com, answered this question gets a prize. So the question is, what are three authentication methods you can use with Duo? Um, just make it a little fun. Next, I highly encourage you to schedule a call with Frank and the team so we can put together a customized demo, show you what that end user experience looks like, do a free 30-day Duo proof of concept. During a proof of concept, you have access to my engineer, which his brain is something I would love to study. He's excellent. But what you do in a proof of concept is prove what works for you. So you're going to be able to pinpoint what your project goals are. We can figure out what policies are important to you. And then if you're ready to move forward with MFA, your trial instance rolls into your live licensing. So you're only going to need to do the work once. And then you have that help to do setup. So like I said, set it and forget it. You're going to know how to do that. And then a shameless plug for everyone is if you're more interested in your zero trust journey, I want to invite you to a free workshop that I just learned about. It's happening on April 25th. So in the workshop, you're going to discover how to start your zero trust journey. They'll help with some best practices that you can implement right away. Learn how to adopt some zero trust strategy that has some actionable results, and it also has a networking aspect. So if you're interested in that link to register, I'll share. You can email me or share that. I'll share it with Frank as well, so we can get more folks involved in that. And so to wrap up, any questions?
I don't see any more questions in the chat. Caroline, thank you. And for those folks from Xtek, don't bother responding to her question because you're not eligible for that prize. Okay. So nice try, Shane. Just kidding. No, it's just for the customers. And yeah, I wasn't worried about the April 25th. But Caroline, if you send me that info, I can also blast it out to everybody who was on the call here, all the customers.
Perfect.
So they can have an opportunity to join. And I would say for anybody that's interested, the invite that you got from the email blast would have my information at the bottom, Frank Morrow, my email, and then for those of you that join based on a sales rep from Xtek, they'll have their information. So you can always reply back to us if you're interested in doing a little bit deeper dive on Duo, and talk more specific about your environment. So I do appreciate it. Caroline, great job. Really enjoyed the presentation and looking forward to, if anybody's got any questions, please let us know. Okay.
Thank you so much, Frank. And it's great to get in front of all of you and happy to help. You're in great hands with Xtek. They're excellent partners.
Thank you. All right, everybody, have a great day. Thanks for joining our webinar.
Thank you
Take
so
care.
much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.